All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that today here in the Pari Masjid we have a very important guest, Brother Ahmed Hussain from Muslim Public Affairs UK. And such an important topic to discuss. Its implications of this legislation that is in the House of Lords, the reading and stages right now, the National Bill of the Borders and Nationality Bill, that is this Nationality and this Borders Bill, is such a serious legislation that may become a bill and law once it gets this royal assent. And therefore our guest is going to explain to us what are the implications, how serious it is, how does it impact on our life, and if you feel that we have that, is it a privilege, is it a right, does it have implication on the children? If your child is born in this country, does it mean that their citizenship can remain forever, or can it be revoked? So there are many questions that you may have, and therefore I'm going to pass it now to our guest to give us a little background about this bill, and inshallah.
So I'm going to, with this talk, I'm going to start from the assumption that you want to know as much as you can. I'm going to start from a blank slate. I'm going to start from giving you the wider context, why we should be concerned. Because talking about a bill, talking about a law is very dull. But the important thing to keep in mind here is who are the ones who are writing this bill? What is this government, its agenda, what is its history, what is its attitude towards people like us? So, to help us understand this current bill and this current situation, I'm going to start with another historical example, and then I will come around. It will all make sense once it comes together. And it will help us give a context for these current bills and why we need to be concerned about them. So, to start off with, who has heard of the phrase Windrush Scandal? Who can put up your hand? Who thinks they could summarize in a few sentences what the Windrush Scandal was? So these were people from the Caribbean who came in after the Second World War. They helped to rebuild this country, and then suddenly they were being deported. Let me just go through a few historical points just to get the timeline right in your mind. So in 1948, the first ship comes over from the Caribbean, and this ship was called the Windrush, and that name gave its name to the whole migration movement from the Caribbean. And up until 1971, 500,000 people, 500,000 Commonwealth citizens came over from the Caribbean. Why do I mention 1971 specifically? Because in 1971, a law came in and said, all of you Commonwealth citizens who are here, you are residents. You are given the right to remain. This was a law. This was, a public legal statement. No one was handing out documents. No one was handing out paperwork saying, look, you're a citizen, you're a citizen. It was a law, it was a legal statement. This was not a problem until 2010. And remember, 2010 is when this current government came in. So when 2010 comes around, the Conservatives come in on a manifesto promising to reduce migration all the way down to the tens of thousands. Now, today, after Brexit and everything, we know that this country needs the cheap labour of migrants. It cannot survive on just tens of thousands of migrants. But in 2010, they had this dog whistle ambition to reduce migration to tens of thousands. And of course it wasn't possible in 2010. It's not even possible today. So in 2012, in an act of desperation, the Home Secretary at that time, who was Theresa May in 2012, she comes up with something called the Hostile Environment Policy. And amongst other disgusting things, one of the things it said was that people now need to show documentation to prove their residency status. It would affect their access to work, their access to rent, their access to healthcare. This Windrush generation did not have that paperwork. They got fired, they lost their homes, some were deported, some lost their lives. This was starting from 2012, the Hostile Environment Policy. It was not until April 2018 that the government finally admitted that yes, people from the Windrush generation were being deported. 6 years. It took them 6 years to admit that. And up until November 2021, only 5% of those who were agreed, who were guaranteed to get compensation, only 5% have been given that compensation. Over 20 have died. And the ones who have been deported already, they're still deported. Why am I talking about the Windrush Scandal? Because this is the context for the current situation. Politicians will come in with manifestos that dog whistle to their voter base. And then they will fulfill that manifesto with bills that can become laws, or they will bend existing laws to, again, dog whistle to their voter base. I know I keep using this word. Is there anyone who doesn't understand what dog whistling to their voter base means? Basically, it means when someone in a public place, it might be a politician, it might be someone in media, they use subtle words, certain phrases, which appeal to the bigots, the racists and so on, in the audience. So they're trying to catch the attention and the favour of certain bigots, certain racists in their audience. So anyway, the Windrush Scandal also shows that this government that has been in power since 2010, it is inherently xenophobic. It's too happy to kick out foreign-looking people if they think their voters will back them. But I also want to make one point now that I will come back to later. The Muslim community did not see the Windrush Scandal as something that affected us. We didn't help the Caribbean community in their time of need. Now we see that the only one who has benefited from our inaction are the bigots in power who could now use similar powers, similar attitudes against us. So historical summary, historical context aside, let's get up to speed with some of the developments, some of the things that happened last year in 2021. And I'm going to start in July. And again, I'm trying to give you the widest possible understanding, because this is a serious situation that we're in here. In July, there was the Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Bill that was pushed through Parliament. Who does this affect? And this is the specific phrasing from the bill. It will impact anyone who's designated as a, quote, serious annoyance. Anyone who goes to a protest, anyone who goes to a demonstration, anyone who goes to a rally, anyone who waves a Palestine flag around, anyone who yells Free Kashmir, anyone who could be seen as a serious annoyance could be impacted by this bill. And it also allows the police to impose any conditions that they think necessary on that protest, that demonstration and so on. And it will become a criminal offence to break that condition, but you know what the best bit is? You won't even be told what the condition was. Who here has ever been to a protest? Even one in your entire life. Who's been to a rally? Were you ever told before you went, this is something you must not do, otherwise you'll be arrested? Did anyone say that to you? No one said anything like that to me. No one usually says that. People usually say, this is an important rally, come to this rally, come to this demonstration. Sheikh Suleiman Alhamdulillah, he's usually one of the guys who's inviting us. But imagine you go to a rally, you join in with the usual demonstrating, chanting, etc., etc., and then the police come in and say, no, you're breaking the law. And you can face up to 10 years in prison. Now, this is a rhetorical question, don't need to put your hand up, but ask yourself, will people be put off from protesting with this law coming in? Will people be put off from dissent, from disagreeing with the government? And think about the powers that are given to the police. They will be the ones who can put conditions on protest, and they will also be the ones who can arrest people for breaking those conditions. I am not exaggerating when I say this single bill moves the entire British society closer to becoming a police state. And this is such a heavy piece of legislation. Can you imagine how long they were debating it for? Who wants to hazard a guess how long they must have been debating this society-changing, paradigm-shifting legislation for? Does anyone want to try and guess?
Yeah.
Pardon?
Yeah.
20 years? Okay, anyone else want to guess how long have they debated bringing this law in? 35 years. 2 days. They were debating this bill for 2 days. Another thing that happened in 2021, last year was a busy year, the protect duty it's not really a bill at this point, it's still at discussion point. But the protect duty, one of the simple points in it is that the police will assess safety risk in public venues. So it might be a concert hall, it might be a wedding hall, it might be any kind of public venue, and this includes massages. Police will assess safety risks in those mosques or madrasas, and then they will tell the mosque management, here's our risk assessment, and if the mosque management refuses to comply with that risk assessment, that mosque management will be committing a crime. Think for a moment that the police come and they say, this brother, Ahmed here, is a threat, here's our reasons A, B and C. And they say to the mosque committee, you can't let this man speak, he's a safety risk. And the mosque management, they say, we know our congregation, we know how to do a balanced talk, we know what we're doing. And the police can say to them, if you don't comply, you are at risk of committing a crime. This is one of the aspects of the protect duty. This is something that, again, is developing. And last but not least, the main point of today's talk, the Nationality and Borders Bill. I'm just going to quickly give you the government statement about the bill. British citizenship is a privilege, not a right. Deprivation of citizenship on conducive grounds is rightly reserved for those who pose a threat to the UK or whose conduct involves very high harm. The Nationality and Borders Bill will amend the law so citizenship can be deprived where it is not practicable to give notice, for example, if there is no way of communicating with the person. That was the government statement. Now let me give you the facts. If you look into the obviously, everyone's thinking, wait, isn't it a human right not to have your nationality stripped away? And if you look at the UN Human Rights Office of High Commissioner, literally the first sentence is, the right to nationality is a fundamental human right. Case closed, surely. Surely. Case closed. I mean, before Isha, Sheikh Suleiman was just talking to one of the brothers, talking about nationality being stripped. The brother was shocked at the very idea. It sounds absurd. How can someone's citizenship be stripped? And yet we've seen this government telling people who've been here since 1948, they gave the best years of their life to rebuild this country after World War II, and they were just sent a text saying, you need to go back home. They had vans driving up and down the streets saying, go back home and you'll get arrested. They had vans saying 106 people were sent back home in this area. Go back home, you'll be arrested. This is what they've been doing since 2012. And this is the government that we have. So it's no surprise that the government has tried to work around this human right. And what has the government's workaround been? Basically, if someone theoretically can apply for dual citizenship or second nationality, theoretically, then that person can have their citizenship stripped. And there's been an assessment, Sheikh Suleiman pointed out, 6 million people in this country are under threat. To give you an example of how, is there anyone here whose parents are from Bangladesh, or they themselves are from Bangladesh? Like myself, my parents are from Bangladesh. And it depends country to country, but for example, Bangladesh, if your parents are from Bangladesh, you can apply for citizenship, for Bangladeshi citizenship. So theoretically, I can apply for citizenship over there. And therefore, I am one of those 6 million. Anyone who's from a country like Bangladesh, I don't know every single country that has that nationality allowance, but anyone who's from the EU, anyone who's from Ireland, if Scotland goes independent, then anyone who's from Scotland, that 6 million could grow. And again, just reflecting on what I was saying about the police and crime bill, if you know that you could be you could have your citizenship stripped. Will that make you more or less likely to protest, to demonstrate, to disagree with the government, and so on? You suddenly have a threat hanging over your head that stops you from acting on your rights as a citizen. As a citizen, you have a right to disagree with the government. As a citizen, you have a right to protest and demonstrate and so on. Your voice is being silenced compared to someone else. You are being treated as a second-class citizen. In all but word, you are being treated as a second-class citizen. That is what this bill will create. You will have that fear over your head. And you know how that fear feels because you've already got a label on your head. When you walk outside, when you pray in public, when you say Allahu Akbar wa Assalamu Alaikum in public, you already know what that fear feels like, thanks to governments like these. You already have the label of being a Muslim. This law will make us second-class citizens in all but name. And again, on the face of it, the reasoning given for this bill, the Nationality and Borders Bill, is to cut illegal immigration. But it is also going to affect asylum seekers. But that's on the face of it. The fact of the matter is, criminalizing and brutalizing the routes of entry into this country does not decrease migration. It increases desperation. Case in point. It's only in the past few years that we've seen these channel crossings, isn't it? It's only in the past few years that we've seen the desperation of people getting into a rubber boat that barely floats and trying to cross one of the busiest sea channels in the world. That's only been in the last few years. And why is that? Because before they used to use lorry crossings, but they cracked down on that, and now they're using rubber boats. But even when lorry crossings were brutal, yet people tried. For those of you who have a good memory, you might remember in October 2019, when 39 Vietnamese migrants were found suffocated to death in the back of a lorry in Essex. This is the level of desperation we're talking about. Laws like the Nationality and Borders Bill, they don't stop these desperate migrants and refugees and asylum seekers coming here. If we want to stop, if the government truly wants to stop refugees from coming here, they need to stop creating refugees over there in the first place. So the Nationality and Borders Bill is just another dog whistle to their voter base. The police bill, protect duty, how the Windrush Scandal was all handled. That is all just a dog whistle. I'm going to go back to that point I mentioned earlier about the Muslim community. We have not really allied with the Caribbean community during the Windrush Scandal. People like Sheikh Suleiman, people like Imam Shakil Beg, leaders like those in the Muslim community, they are the exception to the norm. Tell me if I'm wrong. Most Muslim leaders, most masajid are not like this masajid here, raising awareness about issues that affect all of society, not just, the small bubble that we live in. This masjid, these leaders, they are rare. The Muslim community has not stood up for justice. So listen closely, please. I'm going to come to the solutions part of the talk. As citizens of this country, we have a unique position that no Muslim anywhere else in the world has. And that is that we can oppose injustice that our UK government commits. No Muslim around the world can influence UK politics and get these bigots out of power. If you see something wrong, change it with your hand, or speak out against it, or feel repelled by it in your heart, and that is the least level of Iman. I apologize for any inaccuracies in the translation, but that is a hadith in the collection of Sahih Muslim. Who here feels repelled by what I've told you tonight about some of the things our government has done? Put your hands up if you feel some kind of repulsion in your heart. Who has spoken up about it? It might be on social media, it might be talking to a friend. Who's spoken to someone about it? Alhamdulillah. And who has done something about it? Maybe it's about contacting your MP and messaging them and saying, look, I don't want this happening in my name. Who wants to say or do something about it? Inshallah, inshallah. So we Muslims in the UK, we have a unique responsibility to make our politics in this country more just. That unique responsibility is an obligation upon us. We cannot hide from politics when we know that the police might soon have the power to arrest the committees that run our mosques. We can't hide from that. We can't hide from those politics. There is no sand to bury our heads in. There never was. So who wants to know what we can do about the Nationality and Borders Bill? I'm not going to give you a short, sweet, simple solution. There is none. This is long-term thinking. Part of the process involves the House of Lords. So MPACUK, many others, we co-organised an open letter to the House of Lords. They had a debate last week. About a dozen of them spoke up against it. And why does this matter? Because the Lords and the Commons, they don't clash that often. They don't disagree that often. So when it happens, it draws attention. And by drawing attention to this, we can get more people on board. People like you, masajid like this, shuyukh like Sheikh Sulaiman Ghani. We need to draw attention to this. So if we can help bring this to light in the Lords and the Commons and cause a disagreement between them, then that is all for the good. And also a key part of any bill becoming a law is obviously the House of Commons. And I just want to take a step back here. I'm going to give you a bit more information, a bit more context. In December, just last year, North Shropshire, there was a by-election. The Conservatives lost that seat after holding it for 200 years. They had a lead of 23,000. So what do I mean by lead? The Conservatives, they were number one. Behind them, number two, there was a 23,000 vote gap. After that election, that became a 6,000 vote loss. What do I mean by that? The winners were the Liberal Democrats, and then second place was the Conservatives, and between them and first place was 6,000. Any seat can be up for grabs if we, the voters, create alliances and organise. Second point. No Conservatives voted against the Nationality and Borders Bill in December. None of them. But 100 Conservative MPs rebelled against stricter COVID measures. MPs know that they have to respond and even defy their party if they know that they will lose their seats at the next election. So why do I mention those 2 points about the Tories rebelling and about the Tories losing their seat after 200 years? I want to show you what success looks like. I'm not being abstract or theoretical here. The fact that we see so few MPs representing Muslim views is an indication of failure on our part to build alliances, to organise and to lobby. Who would like to know their MP's voting record on immigrants? If you want to have another talk on your MP's votes and views on other issues like Palestine, inshallah we could, I'm happy to come back and we could arrange that talk. But specifically about immigrants, does anyone want to know what their local MP's views are? I'll start with Croydon South, that's the constituency that this masjid is in. Is anyone else living in this constituency, Croydon South? Yeah, okay, so Chris Philp, he's a Conservative, he's been in this position since 2015. So the Nationality and Borders Bill vote on the 8th of December, he voted for it, he supports it. The police and crime and so on bill, 5th of July, he voted yes, he supports it. In 2016, he voted against banning the immigration detention of those who are pregnant. In 2016, there was a bill saying that, hey, let's stop locking up pregnant immigrants. He said, no, let's not ban that. In 2017, he voted against guaranteeing EU-derived rights and the potential to acquire residency rights for EU and EEA citizens legally resident in the UK. Let me translate that. So those who are from the EU, they're living here, they're residents here, and they want to keep their UK rights and their EU rights. In 2017, he said, no, let's cut that. In 2020, he voted to remove rights for unaccompanied, asylum-seeking children, spouses, vulnerable adults, and dependent adults to join a family member who is legally present in the United Kingdom. Let me translate that. So there was a bill about, there are children who are asylum seekers, their parents or their uncle or their family member is already in the UK. How about that child or that vulnerable adult who is an asylum seeker? How about they come and live in the UK? He said, no, let's not have that. So put your hand up if he's your MP. Does he represent your views? Does he represent your views? No. Do you want your views to be represented to him? Do you think that you need to tell him that he does not represent you?
My point, just to ask a question, is obviously he supported our application for the building of the Pearly Masjid, and now we are hearing his views on immigration. So where do we stand? How do we, obviously for the future it's good for community to know that even though an MP supports our local masjid and building project, but on many of these important legislation and laws, it seems that it is not balanced, and it is something that we need to look very seriously. Do we only support an MP because he supports the building of a masjid, or do we look at all the other of his views and his record of voting? I think that's something that maybe you can advise us on.
I'll answer the question with a question. If a different MP was in power, would he have rejected your planning? Or would he have come and seen the Muslim community and said, these are voters, if I support their planning application, they'll vote for me? Is there an MP, if it was a different MP, not Chris Phelps from the Conservatives, if it was a different MP, would they have said no to your planning application? I'm not saying, I'm not going to give you, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but reflect on that. Would a different MP have turned away the planning application to be a masjid?
Planning permission is different from MP, isn't it? It's a different section.
Is an MP even in a position to block a planning application? Anyway, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, especially of the esteemed Sheikh. So that's just a question to reflect on. Steve Reed. Yeah, Croydon North. So Nationality and Borders Bill vote on the 8th of December. He was absent. So if anyone's here from his constituency, you can have a word with him that the next time a vote comes up, I would like you to attend and I would like you to vote against it. The Police and Crimes Bill in July, he voted no. In 2016, he voted to ban the immigration detention of those who are pregnant. So the opposite of the previous MP I mentioned. In 2017, I'll just summarise it. Again, he voted the opposite. And in 2020, about rights for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and so on, he voted to retain those rights. Again, the opposite of that of the MP. So now you know where this local MP and some of the local MPs stand. What is the way forward? We need to keep in mind, basically, an MP responds when they know that you will make the effort to vote them out. If you are apathetic, they don't care about you. If they know you will make the effort to vote them out, then they will start to listen to you. But on top of that, another thing to keep in mind is that an individual cannot achieve this, cannot achieve anything. It takes a community to be organized and active to achieve anything. So, inshallah, in time, I'm going to talk with Sheikh Suleiman. I'll talk with the mosque committee about a curriculum for activism, and it should be ready by Ramadan, inshallah. But are you, the people of Pearly Masjid, and those on Facebook, are you ready to be part of your mosque's attempt to be active? Will you raise your voice and your hands? Because today we're talking about the Nationality and Borders Bill. Tomorrow we could be talking about Palestine. Next week we could be talking about the Rohingya. Next month we will be talking about the Uyghur because of the Beijing Olympics and so on, raising awareness. Everyone's going to be talking about the Uyghur next month. But one sheikh, one mosque's committee cannot handle all of these issues that we need to tackle. An active mosque needs an active community and an organized community to build skills, to build alliances with non-Muslims and other Muslims. Now is the time to be brave and bold and to stand against injustice. Because this injustice, look at the Windrush Scandal, this injustice is only growing. It is our duty as Muslims to be the barrier to stop this injustice growing any further. That is our duty as Muslims. If you want to support your Shaykh and your mosque in this endeavour, I've got a sign-up form here specifically for the masjid. If you're on Facebook and your local masjid is not active, help us get in touch, reach out to us, and leave a comment, and we will reach out to your community, inshallah. And if you think this talk was beneficial, talk to me about joining MPACUK or donating, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan for your time. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
Anybody have any question? Yeah?
Just one question, how would this affect, we understand how it would affect the kind of BME or BAME ethnic groups. Let's say you had a native, quote unquote, British person. Is it relevant to them or not? Would they be affected by it or not?
Specifically the Nationality and Borders Bill. Well, again,
how far back does it go? I mean, they could say, okay, well, I was born here, my parents came here in the 40s, 50s, whatever. So that means you're
if you don't mind me asking, what country did your parents come from?
So North and South Africa.
So what you would need to do, if you want to specifically find out about yourself, you need to go to find out the policies of your country. So I mentioned myself, my parents are from Bangladesh. The policy of Bangladesh is, if your parents are from Bangladesh, then you can apply for citizenship. So that's the simplest way forward. I don't know every single country's policy.
Let's say I had a passport from one of those countries and I have a British passport. So then there would
You're definitely one of the 6 million.
Okay, so if you have dual citizenship,
Yeah.
then you qualify for.
You're one of the 6 million, yeah. If you have dual citizenship, if you've got a second passport, etc., you are definitely one of the 6 million.
And if you don't have dual citizenship?
Again, look into your heritage and look at, like I said, my parents. I've got a British passport, my parents are from Bangladesh. Bangladesh's policy is if your parents, I've said this like 3 times now. Yeah.
So, but what about then a native, like I said?
Well, like generations and generations ago.
Yeah, a white British person,
Okay, they may not be affected by it, but, I mean,
And they would be deemed, like you said, the bill, an annoyance or something like that. Or let's say they were just they would be deemed an annoyance.
Okay, so you mean the police and crimes and so on bill, that other bill?
Oh, that was a different bill.
That was a different bill, yeah. I mean, if we make this country too hard for migrants to move to live in, the problems that we have right now, the supply chain, the lorry drivers, there aren't enough nurses and so on, the country's going to fall apart. This all comes down to the Conservative Party fulfilling their xenophobic manifesto back from 2010. With each election that comes along, they have a different manifesto, but they're on a winning streak here. They've been winning elections since 2010. So they don't have much of a reason, they believe, to change their tone. We need to wake them up out of that. We cannot be apathetic. As tempting as it is to stick our head in the sand, there is no sand, there never was. There's only oppression, there's only dhulm, and it's only going to grow if we, the Muslims, do not act as the barrier against it.
We know it's serious, but in terms of acting now, how soon do we need to actually start making moves before it gets to that? As in, worst case scenario, how soon can the bill actually pass and for it to be actually made a law?
We saw with the Brexit discussions things passing very quickly in a matter of weeks. So on one hand, there's that. It's a question of how desperate will the government become to try and get a public win. And right now, the government could be very desperate to look strong. We all know what's going on right now, the Christmas parties and all that stuff that's going on. They're feeling very humiliated right now. They might want to, punch the brown community in the face to look strong. The best time to act is 20 years ago, the second best time to act is now. So, alhamdulillah, with events like this, we're raising awareness. Masajid like this, leaders like Sheikh Suleiman, they are fantastic at giving advice to the community for what to do next. But we always need to remember we're in this for the long run. Yeah? This is one bill. There will be another bill behind that. There will be another bill behind that. And there's always so many other causes that we still need to keep an eye on. Palestine, the Rohingya, the Uyghur, etc., etc. One mosque, one sheikh can't do all of that. It's our duty as members of the Muslim community to support our leadership when they're doing good. We need to be coordinated and organised, and inshallah, what are we doing as an organisation to do our bit? We've completed the curriculum, we'll be ready by Ramadan, inshallah. We'll be working with Masajid to help them train activists and activism in their community. That's what we're trying to do.
Yes, of the 6 million, as I understand from you, is mostly the Muslim community which will be affected, if I understand correctly. How about the immigrants of other religions from other subcontinent countries?
So the 6 million, that is only looking at it ethnically. And that is any European, and every European, from every continent, every Asian, every African, and so on. So that's where the 6 million comes from.
Okay, so if I'm from Pakistan and I go with this movement, and there's a Hindu and a Sikh from India as well, will the law apply to all three of us equally as well?
The possibility is equal for all of you, but I should point out that Priti Patel, who has links to the Hindutva movement in India, it's not a coincidence that in the same time frame that we've seen India bring in the CAA and the bills to keep immigrants out and then to let them back in but keep the Muslims out, that could be a coincidence, but it could also have been a learning exercise. But in terms of the Nationality and Borders Bill specifically, the possibility, in theory, is equal. The reality, we don't want to see the reality unfold. We don't want to get to that position.
More equal than others.
Yeah.
Last final question.
Yeah, I had a few.
Right.
And, it was one of on that point was more around. I believe India is a different nationality law, so you cannot hold dual citizenship. So I don't believe, based on what you've said, that would impact them. But like myself, I'm Pakistani and I do hold dual citizenship. So I believe I am one of the 6 million that you mentioned. One of the things I wanted to touch upon was you mentioned that anybody like yourself who isn't a Bengali citizen, but you have the ability to apply for citizenship. So even people that can apply, who are eligible for dual citizenship, would that mean that they would fall under the 6 million?
Yeah.
Okay. And also you mentioned about politicians. I think votes are currency, right, for them. So I think at least we could probably I don't know if we could create a template letter and just even for somebody like Chris Bell to just make him aware that we won't be voting for him in the next election, for this I'm sure there's a multitude of reasons, but quite simply I think this is as good a reason as any other, because obviously we should have the right to remain in this country.
So in terms of letting your MP know how you feel, when we start looking into detailed strategy, there's so many options open to you. But before you can start acting on a strategy, you have to think about who's in my team and who's going to help me win. If it's you by yourself, inshallah, all the best to you, but you're not going to achieve anything. But if we can, as a community, unite and have a clear strategy that all of us are working together on. It's not one person working on his good idea over there, one person working on his good idea over there, because there's so much we can do. We could, as a Muslim community, send a letter to an MP. We could then coordinate with the Christians and the Jews and the BAME and the every other community we can think of, and we all send the same letter on the same day. No, forget that. We go to his office and drop it off at his office on the same day. And then at the local council elections in May in Croydon, because I know that let's say that there are local council elections in here in May, and then we coordinate again with the community and say we're not going to vote any. The MP is Conservative, we're not going to support any Conservative councillors. Even though it's not the MP, like I said, it's about sending a message. These are all ideas. The ideas will not work if the team is not behind it, pushing it. So there's a lot to do, there's a lot we can do. We are Muslims, we have achieved greater things, we have overcome greater obstacles than this, brothers and sisters. We are Muslim. All we need to do is to unite behind our good leaders, be coordinated, be organised. And organisations like MPACUK, we are creating and giving the tools to leaders like Sheikh Suleiman so that the community can benefit, inshallah.
Just a quick question. When is that bill going to the House of Lords for consideration?
So on I think it was the 5th, but it was sometime in the past week or so when the Lords discussed it. So the open letter that MPACUK and others co-organised, that was pushed to the Lords before then. Now it's going to bounce back to the Commons, and we have to utilise the fact that it's going to go between the two once, I think, at least one more time. Let's utilise that. Again, that's an opportunity, that's an idea that we need to be united behind and try and make work. Okay, why did I mention Ramadan and the work that we're doing? We need to always be thinking long term. What I mean by that is a sports team is never satisfied with only winning once. A sports team is always working with one victory to work towards the next victory. You know, what was the tactics that worked in the game? Who were the players that worked really well in the game? Who are the players who we need to train them more? We might have one victory, it's not game over, that's it, we've got what we want. Even if we lose, it's not game over, we didn't get what we want, we learn from it. That's what I mean by being called united and organised. We fight where we can fight, and we learn and we move forward.
Jazakallah khairan for participating. May Allah reward you all abundantly, and may Allah Ta'ala make that all those who have attended this important talk by Ahmed Hussain from MPACUK, may Allah reward him abundantly also, inshallah. And I think it's important because obviously as Imams we don't fully understand these types of political participation in these laws. That is why there are people who are experts, and that's where we can benefit, and that is why it's important that the Masajid do support those organizations that is trying to engage with the communities and bring them this important awareness of such an important bill. It's going to have serious implications. And when I think about this, we need to really look at the future generation. Tomorrow we may go into the afterlife, and they will be saying that there was in 2022 a bill was passed in the House of Parliament, and here we are, the next Prime Minister and the next Home Secretary. We don't know because it will just build up on what has already been passed in it. And that's why people are saying right now it's only, this was always happening. They could revoke any person's citizenship, but this clause 9, I believe, particularly is revoking a person's citizenship without notification. So that means a person could be abroad, and but he doesn't even know that his citizenship has been revoked. So how is he going to appeal? That is where the danger is. Imagine you don't have a right. Imagine you are stateless. And when we speak about 39 detainees in Guantanamo, who is supporting and work? They are from different parts of the world. Some are from Yemen, some are from, maybe somebody is from Afghanistan, somebody from Saudi Arabia. Imagine if they are not even returned to their own country, they are stateless, they have to send them to other places, other parts of the world. Imagine what they are going through, the pain and the suffering and the hardship, unbelievable. So we are living at a time where there is so much of injustices. 20 years have gone by. We are speaking about Windrush Scandal. We are saying, and the campaign is, what about those 20 years of those detainees and the last 39 remaining, we all have to make dua that Guantanamo is shut down and they be released and returned to their families. They should have been released long time ago. This place should have been shut down long time. So today's talk, obviously, the nationality and the bills and the border and the borders bill, it has serious implication. How do you feel if you are, your citizenship is revoked, and what do you do? Imagine those children that are born here or they came as refugees. What about them? What's going to happen to the future? So a lot of implications, and today we've just got an understanding. Jazakallah khairan. Allah Ta'ala accept your sitting here. Allah reward